have so much to say about the first 2 episodes about the Eras Tour documentary series, and I'm not even sure at this point if this is going to just focus on episode 1 or if it's going to be episode 1 and 2. It's going to depend how long I yap about the first one, and we'll see if it seems right to have both of them in the same video. Anyhow, I really loved a lot of things about it. I think it was really well put together. I think it was really good at evoking emotions, but also it was really good at like having like one moment that was a little sad, a little solemn, a little bit like the truth of some of the things about the Eras Tour that were not necessarily as happy. Like obviously there were some really serious issues that were discussed in this, like Vienna needing to be canceled and what happened to those poor children that were just trying to go to a Taylor Swift dance party in the UK. But also, like, you don't want to have, like, the sadness or the mourning or the, like, being upset about that, like, dominate the whole mood of even an episode, right? Because I think in a lot of ways, that lets the people that were trying to start terror, make people afraid, it really lets them win in ways, but also just the way it very seamlessly flowed from things that were funny, things that were relatable, things that felt like a big family, like, there was just a really big vibe with Taylor and her dancers and her musicians, and like especially the people that she's worked with for a number of years, that like they are a part of her extended family in a lot of ways. So in recent months, Taylor has been very open about how everything with the Eras Tour was really engineered to be able for her to have enough money to be able to purchase back her master's rights, right? And I think in a lot of ways that she has kind of downplayed, and other people have kind of downplayed, just the amount of work. Even forget getting up on that stage 3.5 hours every night, just thinking about all of the logistics, getting the people, places, and things in position, making sure all the costume changes go correctly, making sure that like you just remember which city you're supposed to be in. Like there are so many details about touring, and especially touring with that elaborate, a lot of set pieces, a lot of costumes, a lot of people. Things can go wrong, and the fact that we like, there's that allegation that costumes got burned, but I don't necessarily know that it's come from any type of legitimate source, but like just the fact that all of the people, places, and things for the majority of like the Eras Tour stuff managed to make it from beginning to end, that is a feat, that is an achievement. But also when we've talked about like the effort, the amount of work that went into the Eras Tour, we focus a lot on Taylor, and the one thing about this documentary is that Taylor wanted to make sure that she wasn't the only person that was featured, that she was repeatedly making the point that all of these other people, all of these musicians, all of these truck drivers, all of these dancers, like all of these people are doing an immense amount of work, especially because like load in and load out and all of those things, like you got a lot of things to move around physically. They're not going to move themselves. And I really loved that she really like, I think the New Heights podcast was about getting other people to recognize how much work Taylor had put into Eras Tour and getting ready, and I think parts of this episode were about this, but a lot of this episode, of these 2 episodes, was about just all of the people that were the best and the brightest with their respective skill sets that were like really working their butts off alongside Taylor. And I think one thing about Taylor that like a lot of people want to make her out as being this petty person, as being threatened by other people, but that is not anything consistent with the view that we got of her in this. Like her repeatedly stressing that she wants these other people that are on stage with her to have their moments. Like it was really so unusual for me to recognize and know the names of multiple dancers, but more so than that, to be waiting for their respective little points at each given night, to be waiting to see what Cam said during We Are Never Getting Back Together, to see Jan dancing in like, especially the TTBD set. He has a lot of great dance moves, like the ladder. Like there were so many. Natalie and Rebecca Harkness, like Papa Flo. It wasn't just the dancers. It was the dancers' family. In this, we get dancers' family as well. We get Cam and Colin's mother, Kim, and she was just lovely, and just the interactions between her and Cam were so sweet. But also another thing that I liked about this is a lot of us theorists have been stressing for a while that there is a big plan behind the Eras Tour. It is not just songs in a random order, and especially the mashups are not just random songs that she mashed together because she thought they might sound good together. Like there was a lot of work and planning that went into, like, when we saw her with Ed Sheeran, like, they were talking through, like, the way that she was going to introduce him, like, how he was going to come out on stage. All of those things were planned, were rehearsed, were discussed, were thought about. And I hope that that really provokes a lot more people to be interested in those surprise songs, especially for the episodes, like the things that are being focused on most prominently in this docu-series. I do want to circle back to the dancers for a second because I got off track before I meant to, but another thing about the dancers and honoring them and recognizing their contribution to the tour was just like, Eras Tour was a huge resume builder for these dancers. We had one of the dancers, I believe it was Ashley Balin. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing her last name correctly or if I'm accrediting the right person, but please correct me down below if I'm wrong. I apologize. I got it in my head that her name was Ashley. Her name is Amanda. So whenever I say Ashley, I mean Amanda. I'm sorry, there were a lot of people. It was late when I was filming this. I was not necessarily at my best. My apologies to Amanda Balin. But she had basically stressed about how short a dancer's career is and how hard dancing, especially that many number of hours per night, that many nights, how hard that is on your body and how short the average dancer's career is. So when you know that and when you see the fact that, like, Eras Tour was a job of a lifetime. It was a huge resume builder. It got a lot of name and face recognition for these dancers, especially the ones who are a little bit older and might be aging out of dance into something else. But she also gave them sizable life-changing bonuses. We don't hear the amount of money, but you can tell by the way everyone is acting that she has just given them life-altering amounts of money. And you can see by how Cam and his mother are appreciative of that. And like, you see so many ways that different people are talking about the sacrifices that they make. So every person involved made sacrifices, whether it was time away from their family, whether it was wear and tear on their bodies and like just that much work every night, whether it was other opportunities that they might wanted to have pursued in their careers. Like, Taylor recognizes the extended commitment, and not just that, but she also has seemingly kept all of these people on her payroll, even right now where she is not touring and says she's not like planning a tour for the life of a showgirl. We'll see what's next out of her tour wise, but like, it seems like definitely during this showgirl era that she's keeping a lot of these people on payroll, at least in order to do a lot of the like photo shoots for the merch and also the music video. Giving Cam especially, who stressed how much of a disadvantage he was at because so many people just look at him and see a large body and don't realize that he is an incredible dancer. He has a tremendous amount of skill, but also like, he is more than just a dancer. He has a lot of charm. He has a lot of charisma. I would like to see him like host a variety show or something of that. Like, obviously, if this is something that would be interesting to him, because I just think he's got a lot of skills, and like, even as he gets older and maybe doesn't want to dance as much, as can't dance as much, having that opportunity to go in front of the camera and having a name that is recognizable enough that he can probably get jobs doing that, and having a little bit of a cushion monetarily to be able to take chances in his career. And all of these dancers, that money that she provided them with, that likely gives them time to rest, recuperate, and consider what their goals, what their dreams are. Cam was saying the amount of opportunities that he had never considered, like he thought that he was going to graduate from, I don't know if he went to college or a special dance class, it doesn't matter. He thought he was going to graduate from that and then he was going to be a dance teacher. It never occurred to him that he could go dance on a major, massive world tour. And now that Taylor has done this, and like, obviously using diverse dancers, it should be the bar, it should be the minimum, but a lot of people don't do that. A lot of people prioritize uniformity. It was something that they mentioned in the episodes of the documentary. A lot of people want uniformity, so they're not willing to consider more diverse dancers, but Taylor really stressed like wanting people in the crowd to see someone on stage that looked like them and to feel represented, and the value and the importance of that. And Taylor sets norms, like having an artist that large setting this norm that it's not uniformity that I want in my dancers, it's representation. And in a lot of ways, I think representation is better than uniformity. Like, maybe it doesn't look as uniform, but why do we need things to look uniform in the first place? I cannot think of a time when I was watching Eras Tour and I'm like, wow, this dance would be so much better if all of these dancers looked the same and were the same shape and size. Like, the large majority of people that aren't like heavily biased by the prevailing beliefs in the industry are not going to look at that and think that's bad. Only people that have been programmed to believe that that's bad are going to believe that it's bad. They also stress the fact that a number of her band members especially have been with her since 2007, her entire career, which I say a lot that Taylor doesn't get nearly enough credit for the leader she is. Like, having an operation like that and leading it well is hard. And the fact that so many people have stayed with her for so long, and I know some people are gonna be like, well, it's just for the money. And yes, there are some people that will put up with anything for money, but it really didn't feel like an environment that was tense, that was stressful. Like, it seemed like people that actually respected each other and were comfortable in their presence. And a lot of that goes back to, like I said earlier, this confidence that Taylor has in herself and in her own performance, such that she isn't threatened by other competent, confident people on stage. But being able to hear from a lot of these dancers and a lot of these musicians who were with Taylor since 2007 gives a lot of additional context, gives a lot of additional details. It really helps us to understand the scope and the scale of things more than we maybe would have otherwise realized. Having Amos comment about like those first run-throughs of the whole set list and it being 3.5 hours and him thinking, oh, we're gonna have to cut songs, and then they added 3, like, just giving context of like what is normal and what is different and what is this lifestyle, this life even like. It was a huge amount of strain on everybody involved, but also it was a lot of risk. And I think it's interesting because a lot of the way that we talk about Taylor, and especially the way that I talk about Taylor, is about her unwillingness to take risks with certain things. So like, I've said recently that she doesn't really broadcast her whereabouts, where she's gonna be, because of safety and security reasons. But the things that she does take risks with are the things that are like career things that a lot of people in the industry don't believe that she can pull off. Like the Eras Tour, like the re-recordings. These are things that when Taylor initially proposed them, started talking about them, she got laughed at. A lot of people didn't think it was possible. A lot of people didn't think it was doable. And like, she has really gone over the fact that even before rehearsals started, she needed to be on a fitness regimen for 6 months to be able to get through like the rehearsals of everything. But I think often when you take these big risks like that, that is when you make something that is more profound than what it is seemingly that you are making. And this was something that, was it Amos that mentioned? I think it was Amos that said they were working on something that was more profound than music. And Taylor talked about the magic, and the second episode had magic in its title. And I think that's why Disney is like a perfect company to put this out in the world, because yes, there are a lot of like scientific and economic and like mathematical things that can make an experience good and can make an experience important and memorable, but there are so many intangible things about the energy, about being in a crowd of that many people, about singing along to these songs that have a deep emotional place in your soul, about meeting people like you, about just unabashedly celebrating girlhood and not feeling like people are going to mock you, people are going to not understand you. So few people is that their norm, right? Like, most people have some level of like, people tease you about the things that you get into a lot in your life. If you take things too seriously in other people's eyes, they are very quick to knock you off of that little podium of happiness, because people resent when you're able to be happy with things like this. Like, that's the truth of the matter. A lot of people resent us for being able to enjoy things like Taylor Swift and to get such profound benefit from it. But I've said a number of times that I think Taylor Swift's work especially And pop music in general is so much more than just music. It is the phrases that we scream, sing along to as mantras, whether that be in our car alone in our room, or whether that be in a stadium with tens of thousands of other people. It is all of the friends that we are making on this journey. Like, especially in the performance art space, we are constantly talking about the way that the friends that we have made in this community are some of the best, most important, most influential friends that we have had in a long time, because we come together on a lot of shared culture, shared belief in the value of found family and friendship, and like recognizing that that has so much, like, even if it doesn't have financial value, so a lot of people in the world don't value it, having friendship with other emotionally available people is one of the most valuable things you can have in your life. And I think it's so good that they are consistently bringing attention back to the magic, the intangibles, it being more profound than just music, because that stuff is real, it's important, it's valuable. And young people that are watching this, especially young musicians that are watching this, are going to internalize that. I'm very excited that each episode is going to give us at least one special guest. We've had Ed Sheeran and Florence already, and just, oh my gosh, Ed's voice with Taylor's, like them duetting together, like just casually behind it's so good. I so much want Taylor to do like an acoustics duets album. I just want her to sit down with a bunch of people that she's friends with and casually record some songs and not put too much production into it, and then release it in the world so we can have more little moments like that. But that scene with Ed in particular really was a good contrast between them talking about Southport and the tragedy that happened there, but also like her getting comfort from a friend of hers. Like, this is shortly after Vienna. She's talking about how the cameras were supposed to start following her at Vienna, and a lot of us had suspected that she had plans that were important for Vienna that she was disappointed that she had to cancel, and I think this really confirms it. But having Ed come in and just help her get back into the spirit, like musically, and also just seeing her like rationalize this anxiety, this panic that she's going through. I've spoken about how ever since TTPD, she has been a lot more open and a lot more like, obviously, I say performing mental health, and I don't want anyone to take it to mean that I think that the things that she's performing are fake, but like, so often we are told to internalize, shove down all of our negative mental health self-image, and definitely don't share it with the world. But seeing her like recognizing, like, she didn't say that it was an anxiety attack that she was trying to work, get past, but laying down, relaxing, listening to an audiobook, recognizing that like this feeling will diminish if I get back on stage and I, essentially get back up on the horse and I go back through my job and what I love about it again. And then it was just a really good juxtaposition of the flow of happy into sad kind of scenes that we were getting. I also thought that the use of B-roll was incredibly effective. There were a lot of things that they could have told us, but they showed us instead. And a lot of the things that we were seeing were both like in the fans, in the crowds, what the people out there were doing, but it was intermixed with things that were behind the scenes. People rehearsing, people like giggling and like having fun, people running into their quick change, like all of these different things. And it really gave a good sense of the emotional vibe, both like of the crowd and also the people behind the scenes. Like, just seeing like people genuinely seemed to like their coworkers and hanging out with their coworkers, which is always nice to see. And I think one other thing that was really good at is when you are really good at something, you often make it look so easy that the people observing you think that it is easy. Taylor Swift made that 3.5 hours look very easy every night, and seeing the other side of it, seeing the rest, seeing the practice, seeing the rehearsal, seeing all of the things that she needed to do to get to that place, seeing behind the scenes all of these other people working to support her and to keep the whole everything going, it just really helped convey how big that scale was without needing, oh, so we do this for XYZ hours and we have these people doing this, that, and the other. It was a really good juxtaposition of like everything and cutting between like in front of the house and behind the house. It was a really good way of just like, I don't know, conveying the kind of hustle or haste or if vacillating emotions, is that the word that I'm looking for? Probably not, but whatever. I'm running on very little sleep because of obvious reasons with Blondie. And just in general, Eras Tour is a coordinated dance that dozens of people participate in, and that's not just the dancing on stage, it is all of the behind things, it is all staying out of each other's ways, practicing in the bathroom because you recognize that like it doesn't bother people as much, like all of these ways, and just seeing like people reflect on like how to get what they need done without necessarily negatively impacting the other people that they work with. That's always just like, it's very healthy workplace stuff to see. There's a quote that Taylor said in a voiceover, "Millions of stories and counter-narratives all colliding in one place where we all feel safe to be demonstrative about a whole spectrum of emotion." So obviously I've been talking about how she makes people feel safe to express emotions, especially girly emotions, feminine emotions, things that often we are discouraged to do, especially in public places and spaces. There is a lot, like how many people had a video where they were crying at the Eras Tour go viral and have people just be incredibly rude? Like, people should be able to cry. That is normal. That is a normal human thing. And if you have a problem seeing people crying, or you think that people are only crying for attention, you are the person with the problem, not the person crying. But also it says so many things, millions of stories. I talk very often about the power of storytellers, about one of Taylor's greatest gifts is being a good storyteller and recognizing that all of these different people from all of these different walks of life are coming together, and they are like, they have their own story and their own thoughts and everything like that that they are bringing together. And then she said, and counter narratives, and I think that's very interesting. Especially nowadays, there is often disagreement between groups of fans about what each song is about, who each song is about. And a lot of people get very defensive of who they believe their choice is. And up until, I would say, TTPD, a lot of people felt that it was easy and we knew who all of these songs are about. And now it's really interesting to see the wrench that she threw in the works by hinting at this 10-year situationship, or hinting at relationships behind the scenes, and also hinting at things that are happening in the front maybe not being as real as things that are happening behind the scenes. Whilst fans may disagree on the internet with what songs are about, when they come together at Eras Tour, it doesn't matter what they think the songs are about. And a lot of times, like, one of the things that Taylor stressed to people at the Eras Tour was that, like, before Eras Tour, everybody had this idea of what muse and what part of Taylor's life this song was about, and Eras Tour was about making those songs about Taylor and the person listening to them more than any outside person. And I do believe that a lot of this is the prelude to her revealing Taylor Swift TM, the brand, versus who she is, the person inside, and all of that jazz. And she's already hinted at that a lot in both interviews recently and in the docuseries, I believe. And one thing that I really liked about this is how it both showed the like statistical, the like demonstrative, the calculable, I'm sorry, the wording is not going to be the greatest because of the sleep not being the greatest, but y'all know what I mean, so don't judge me. I'm going to make up words. The calculable impact of the Eras Tour in terms of like the earthquakes from Swiftie stomping their feet and dancing and things like that, but also in Swiftonomics, in the way that when Taylor went to these cities, tons of people flocked to those cities, and tons of those people were spending money in those cities, and every city along the tour had an economic boost in a way that is very difficult to see in nowadays world. But also, Taylor didn't disproportionately overvalue that above the intangible, the not numbers, just the feelings of the moment, the feeling of being part of something big, the magic of it. Taylor didn't diminish the magic in order to boost up the economic or the physical impact that the Eras Tour had, and I think that's so important. And again, I think these are things that as an artist that is like the biggest artist in the world right now, well, maybe not the world total, but in the English speaking world right now, to do these things, to show these things, it is going to shape how future artists see so many things. And I also just love seeing how excited Taylor got after getting off the stage at Eras Tour, and she just like was positively giddy. And it is offensive to me that some people believe that she should put down the sparkly boots and jumpsuits and should just be a mom and 100% focus on that and not do the thing that she has loved since her childhood and get out there and perform. And it's very sad that so many people would rather see her in a subdivision with a baby on either hip next to Travis's side than on the stage at another tour in, another year or 3. Speaking of which, it has been interesting how little Travis has shown up by this point, and I definitely think that's on purpose. I think especially that advertisement that was very Travis focused is probably the large majority of what we are going to see of Travis in this, just because if you believe their schedules and their timelines, because they're not reliable very often. There was very little time spent together until after the Eras Tour, and that's another reason why the whole, we're getting engaged and married just does not necessarily, does not pass muster with me, especially with a woman that is 35 that has completely changed what she wants in a relationship, and but I think we got just enough Travis in the first episode that her fans will continue to watch it until I assume that he's probably going to get an episode at some point. In some juncture, he will be the special guest and they'll go over that. But it is interesting to me how similarly Taylor talks about Travis to the way Taylor talks about Cam. That's all I'm gonna say. That is all I'm gonna say. The one thing that was kind of sad about seeing the end of the Eras Tour is just seeing people okay, hug that guy. All right, you gotta go, go, go. And just recognizing so much of her life is go, go, go. And some people like that. Some people benefit from that. And I think being able to take her cats, who in a lot of ways are her family and her home, and also being able to take her blood family with her kind of diminishes the negative impact of touring. But you got to think that especially with her parents getting older, her brother probably has something of his own life that he wants to do that doesn't involve touring. I mean, I don't know, maybe he really loves traveling around. Maybe, I don't know, I'm kind of making assumptions because we don't know a lot about him. But just kind of getting stressed how much her job consumes her life. She unwinds by signing CDs, which actually, it makes a lot of sense. As somebody who used to do repetitive doodles when I was having an emotional moment and needed to wind down, it makes a lot of sense to me that signing albums would be kind of like her scribbling, doodling, but also being able to monetize it, which is always a good thing. But again, it really stresses this whole married to the hustle, married to the job. Her first love is her job, and that is one thing that this is really effectively conveying. She had some phone conversations with Travis that felt very scripted. I need to go rewatch it because a friend of mine pointed out that she was covering her mouth, and also her lips didn't look like they were moving the same way the words were coming out. So I'm curious to go back and rewatch that at some point. But both of those phone conversations felt suspiciously staged. That's all I'm gonna say. And here we are. You're probably thinking, oh, Erin is coming to the end of this. No, I want to discuss everything in episode one thing at a time. So one of the first things they discuss is how many people that are involved with Eras Tour were told that their desire to do what they were doing for a career was a fool's errand. And that, I really wanted to be a musician when I was a kid. I played cello a lot. I wanted to play guitar. I actually, at 41 years of age, started learning electric guitar because it was something that I felt was taken from me because of my parents' middle-class practicality, to be quite frank. But they really talk about the fact that every one of them was discouraged from pursuing their dream and told, if anything else will make you happy, do that thing. But if this is the only thing that will make you happy, pursue your career. And I do think that as Taylor and the people around her kind of grow and age and develop and things like that, that they are more kind of helping facilitate younger artists and things like that being able to have success in music. Like there's a whole Jack and his sister and a couple of other people around him are working on those LGBTQ like recording studios that they're going to make available to especially people that are in like impoverished areas. I think that we're going to see a lot more of that in Taylor's future, like more, maybe not as openly. I do highly suspect that she has probably contributed behind the scenes to Jack's thing. I just think most of her charitable acts happen behind the scenes because no matter what charity she does, people are just going to use it as an excuse for her to do more. So we know that when she was visiting all of the different cities for the Eras tour that she was donating to food banks in those cities, and in some cases was donating more than the governments of these areas were funding their own like food insecurity programs. So I know that there are a lot of things that she likely donates to that we don't know about. I also think that often having access to money and power makes it easier for you to hold the door open for people, and that there are some rooms that you only get into once you are a billionaire. Do I want billionaires to exist? No. In a world where billionaires exist, though, I want at least one in the room to have some level of empathy and concern for others. Another thing Taylor mentioned, and something that she's been talking about in a lot of interviews as well, is mentoring people and the people around her like all being prime candidates to mentor others. And I think especially like putting money into going to college for music is a very risky proposition, especially because the industry really likes young people. But encouraging more people to be mentors, encouraging the people around her to mentor other people, and also mentoring other people herself, that is another way at which she and the people around her can kind of shatter the glass ceiling, but also reach out with a hand behind you to kind of help the people behind you up the ladder. Like that should be the end goal. Making success and happiness and people's desired careers more accessible is always what should be the goal, I think. Another thing Taylor discussed is how people perceive the Eras tour as pieces accidentally falling in place. Nope, plate tectonics. Basically, she believed that all of these separate forces came together when they were supposed to and just clicked and formed the Eras tour. So I think it's a really good way to look about it, especially because there is so much individual work that had to go in from each of the plates in this plate tectonics example. And again, it goes back to that whole concept of like when you're good at your job, things look effortless, but this wasn't effortless at all. I also liked how the first episode started with the end. We talk about bookends a lot. We talk about mirrors and inversions and all of those different like concepts, forms of imagery, symbols, literary devices, but bookends is a big one with her, but also starting at the end and working your way back forward. I think that it works really well out of continuity too, because you're kind of going back and forth between the beginning and the end in a really interesting way, seeing how everything developed, you know, in the long term. So now Taylor said that 2 years before this tour started, which would have been 2023, is when she got the idea. And a lot of us have an overarching theory that Taylor was probably working on Midnight's, TTPD, The Life of a Showgirl, and the Eras tour all kind of at the same time or in succession, because all of these things reference each other in a way that seems like it could have only happened if it was pre-planned. And so I've spoken a number of times. I need to make the video on that. I was hoping to get it out before this aired, but I firmly believe that the meat and potatoes of Life of a Showgirl was written between 2016 and 2021, because all of the like cultural references and like pieces of slang are from that era. And I think that she zhuzhed up some of the details for things that were a little bit more like that we could place to Travis or to Charlie XCX or whatever. And I think Ruin the Friendship is entirely new, but I think a lot of the meat and potatoes of that is old. Because I think all of these things were part of the process of Eras tour being enormous, being this cultural moment, and Tavis is a part of that. Like Taylor knows that people are more interested in her when they can see these torrid relationships that they perceive themselves as being able to get tawdry details from her music. Like, all of these things, those albums, this whole process, I believe, is something that she planned so that she could make Eras Tour as financially successful as possible so that she could purchase her rights back, because that has been such a big priority in her life. She spoke about how then two really bad things happened in quick succession, and obviously those are the sale of her masters to Scooter Braun and then 2020 and the events of 2020 that brought the world to a halt. And I speak very often about how a lot of times pop starlets go through things that are incredibly stressful, incredibly traumatic, and then they don't have any decompression time. They just are expected to get past it, get over it, move on. And that, I think, is incredibly unhealthy. And I think in a lot of ways that for a lot of people, 2020 was the first time that they ever could stop and could process all of the things that could happen to them and like what their response to it was, and could really start to heal instead of just compartmentalizing those things and shoving them back down. And I think that is why TTPD and Eras Tour is so open about the fact that it's not named, but she's describing very clearly the impacts of living through traumatic things and having anxiety because of that and all of that jazz. But then she said something incredibly insightful, and it's really true, but it can be difficult, especially depending on where you are in your life. And I'm paraphrasing, but basically what she said was that, like, if you react properly to bad things happening to you, those things can be happening for you. And I agree. Some of the best things that ever happened in my life stemmed initially from bad places. Like, there were several times in my life that my disability overcame my ability to function through it, and I lost the jobs that I had at those times. And at the time, I thought that that was really terrible, but it turns out that those jobs were what was working me to the point where I couldn't function as a human being anymore. And I needed to get out of those environments, and I needed to start my own thing on my own, where I was my own boss and could really make sure that I'm using my energy wisely on the things that are important to me. And I think very often when you go through something really horrible negatively, and like, sure, sometimes things are awful and there is no upside, but the lessons that you learn from it and the people that you meet while you go through it can help fuel the next part of your life into something better than what you were going through. Like, I lost so many friends when I stopped working because a lot of people were just trying to maintain friendship so that if they wanted a job someday, they could work for one of the cool companies that I worked for. And like, realizing that, and then I came out as a lesbian, and 90% of the men that I knew stopped messaging me at all. That really stunk when it happened to me, and it was really hard to go through. But it really allotted a lot of space and time in my life for people that have more similarities, that understand me more, that are less work to be friends with, that are less transactional friendships. Taylor also talked about celebrating your past, and I think especially if you're a person that has had to reinvent yourself a number of times, and like, a lot of times you can view those old parts of yourself as being lacking, as being lesser, but like, when you learn to be nice and respect yourself and view your past self, your inner child, with compassion, and like, recognize I was doing the best that I could with the knowledge and the circumstances and the access that I had at the time. Looking at your past can be really important in recognizing who you are going forward and like affirming that person and having that person be congruent with who you are and not who society wants you to be. A lot of my complaints with Tavis is that the version of Taylor that participates in Tavis is a version of Taylor that is conforming to everything that the world expects of her. Whereas when you see Taylor and when you get a glimpse at her and things like this, you recognize how much like a deviance or a defiance, or like, it's settling, it's a step down, it's a step back. It's a step into something and someone that isn't as interesting or as nuanced or as deep as the person that we've seen Taylor be in the past. but it also existed in defiance to a lot of, like, Taylor talks about, oh, Travis was everything that I wanted when I was 15. When she was 15 and when she was writing songs, they were fairy tales. She was talking about relationships that were fake. It wasn't until several albums later that she had gotten actual experience with romance and had learned the things that she needs out of a relationship. And one of them is you keep things secret to keep them safe. Taylor also was talking about thinking about all the different girls I was until I was this one, the cost benefit of reinvention. Like, yes, it is a lot of work, it is hard, but reinventing you can make you relevant with more people, with different people, can fuel you into different scenarios and different places in life. We frequently talk about, like, dress for the job you want, not the job that you have, and the way that people perceive you and the way that you move through the world kind of being one of the things that determines whether or not you are granted access to those spaces. But I also think it's relevant that she's talking about how that she's thinking about all of the girls she was before she was this girl, because of the fact that it really seems like a lot of her recent work has been her addressing previous versions of herself, especially her inner child and the person she was when she entered show business, when she first started being a musician and an artist and had kind of popular acclaim. That is something that myself and a number of other theorists interpret as meanings for many of her songs. So it's good to see that she was thinking about a lot of that stuff as well, because it really kind of affirms that that content is very likely in the music like we think it is. I took a note about how impressive, like, what we were seeing about the planning and execution of the tour is, and I honestly would watch documentaries about any individual department, any different group. Like, I want to see the musicians, I want to see the dancers, I want to see the audio people, the video people. I want to know what all of their responsibilities were, how they planned it, how it was all set up, because it's a very intricate machine, and, like, I can tell that. And the parts that we have seen already, and also things like we overheard Tree talking to photographers during the tour and saying, like, exactly what kind of photographs and what kind of footage and things like that Taylor was looking. Like, the way her brain keeps track of so many different aspects of things, not just doing that thing and making a perfect show in the moment, but also recognizing, I'm going to want to preserve this forever, and I'm also going to want to preserve the making of this, and, like, having the framing of all of those things be so artful and so beautiful. Something I've pointed out a lot recently is that Taylor is really enjoying bringing more attention to how good she is at planning. It is like she finally feels like she can boast about herself and not have it taken in the worst possible interpretation. Like, I mean, yes, there are going to be some people that do that, but not the entire people or the entire media or anything like that. But just seeing her ability to put together things like this and to think through, like, the flow of the songs, what to cut, what to not cut, what imagery she wants to have on, costumes, like, there are so many aspects. And sure, she is hiring people to do a lot of aspects of this. She's not coming up with her choreography on her own. She probably has somebody that's managing costumes who, like, she's giving a general idea to, and that person is fleshing it out. But having a vision and being able to communicate that vision clearly to others and delegate the tasks accordingly so they get done appropriately and everything is fine, that is actually more impressive than Taylor just doing it all herself. I'm sorry. Seeing the Eagles sweatshirt that she wore to the first day of rehearsals really confirmed something that I've been saying for a while, which is, like, the erasure of Taylor Swift, the way a lot of things that were associated with Taylor in the past are now associated with Travis, whether that be the color red, she had that first, whether it be the letter T, it's been her name since birth, whether it be the Archer, it's been her astrological sign since birth, but also she was an Eagles fan, and now she won't find her in an Eagles, and I'm so curious, like, I very much suspect that this was done on purpose, because in the later footage we are going to see her in a number of pieces of Chiefs gear, but it is just another visual representation of all of the things that are in Taylor's life that used to be one way but have been slowly replaced by Travis's taint. Her crying the first day of rehearsals. I love her being so open about her emotionality and how that is an important part of what makes her a good artist too. Being in touch with your emotions, being really in touch with your emotions and feeling them deeply and being able to explain them and articulate them really well, like that is one of the things that makes a lyricist great, and that I think is one of the key strengths that Taylor has. She's not some person that is devoid of empathy entirely. I think that sometimes she comes off that way because in trying not to be that person that just cries publicly all the time and has people perceive it in a negative way, because we perceive people crying negatively even when they have very justifiably good reasons to be crying. But also, like, seeing her cry over not just negative things, but like how excited and how passionate and how like glad she is to be in the company of so many other people that are so talented and so passionate. Like, it's so good for her. And she spoke about how she likes to overserve the fans, to give them more than they need or more than they want. And and then she almost immediately afterwards says, like, you make a choice and then there's no going back. It's like, once you have committed all of the planning to this 3.5 hour thing, like, you can't go back on that. And if you can't deliver it, if you don't work out enough, if you don't practice enough, you have a Katy Perry situation where you kind of look embarrassing because you haven't gone through the choreography enough times to like know where the possible pain points are. And like, she just didn't look like Taylor and Beyonce both have like really like longer, very active movement kind of tour vibes. And when you look at them, they are both like very muscular, especially in their legs. And like Katy she didn't have that muscle going into her own tour. And then the fact that there was enough demand for Taylor to fill 255 stadiums, and realistically, there still wouldn't be enough like performances, even if she did do 255 stadiums, because so many people want to see her as many times as possible. And we'll see her as many times as they can until the money runs out where they can't get tickets anymore, you know? Seeing this like lead up to the first Eras tour, it just made me like, I didn't go to Eras tour. I'm not a long concerts person. I am a don't spend more than an hour or two out of bed kind of person. And because of that, like, I have been a certain level of envious for people that got to go to Eras, obviously, but the people that got to go either the first time or the people that got to go the first TTPD set and not know what was going to happen, especially when the entire thing changed and it wasn't just shoehorning TTPD in there. And then one of the dancers, it might have been Natalie, was talking about all of the comparisons that people were making to the Beatles and MJ, which is like, I've brought up a number of times that the people that Taylor Swift is compared to are not Taylor Swift's contemporaries. Like, there are very few artists who have managed to get big and maintain a lot of bigness and also spike into the stratosphere at times. Like, there are very few people that have a career right now that are comparable to Taylor. And like I say a number of times, we are going to look back at Taylor the same way we look back at Shakespeare. This episode, they went into the Swiftquakes, or the little earthquakes that were being caused by people's movements, and also the Swiftonomics of it. This was also an episode where they discussed the womanhood, the femininity, the friendship. It was more than a tour, it was a force that can be reckoned with. And I think those two things coming together, it really showed just how much a group that is predominantly young and like early middle-aged women have both economically and also just like emotionally. And I think that scares a lot of people. Like, so much of patriarchy is about making you ashamed of the things that are natural and normal and valuable about womanhood. We are made to feel shame about friendship with other girls, liking things too much, expressing our emotions in front of other people, when a lot of those things are some of the most important and valuable parts about girlhood. And even as a non-binary person that like I have a complex relationship with girlhood, it has been so healing to see girlhood through Taylor Swift and many Swifties' eyes, and to really work towards healing our inner children. So many people after TTPD really focused on inner child work and healing that part of themselves, and parts work, and so many other things that are concepts that are gone over in the album. And I think a lot of people didn't even necessarily recognize why they were having such a strong emotional reaction to it. They just leaned into it, and by processing the songs, they were able to like go through a sort of healing. And based on what I've heard from a lot of people about Eras Tour, I think going to Eras Tour and being around a lot of other people and celebrating all of those things with them is immensely healing as well. And I think that is what leads to things like Vienna and the Southport attack. People resent the fact that women can be happy without men, and like without relationships, without, like, there is so many benefits to female friendship. People are jealous of female friendship. The people that don't have it, the people that can't have it, they're jealous of found family, and that is very often a concept that is felt amongst queer people. These things, seeing a predominantly marginalized group of people coming together in power, in celebration, in joy, in girlhood, in peace, in joy, like that makes a lot of people angry and a lot of people upset. And that is why, and I think that's why it's so interesting how they chose to segue into talking about Vienna, talking into Southport, you know, showing how Taylor truly felt in those moments. And I think it's good. Enough time has passed that that we're not going to, I don't think, hopefully, that we shouldn't have people saying, oh, what's Taylor have to feel bad for? Like, she didn't lose her kid or what have you. I think enough time has passed that people can recognize that those events were probably very scary and very awful for her as well. Like I said earlier, one thing that I say a lot about Ariana in Manchester is that, like, for a lot of years after that happened, she just work. And I really do hope, and it's kind of hard to tell because she's had a tremendous amount of output, but I really hope that Taylor has had some time to rest, to relax by herself, away from other people, to fully process everything that happened, both good and bad, on the tour, so that it doesn't become like stress or so it doesn't become a stressful moment that is just compartmentalized away, that can come back and strike when you least expect it. But also when Taylor was talking about how she can't act scared because it's like, a pilot acting scared. When you act scared as the person that is commanding a crowd, that makes them scared. And so you have to be able to just lock it down for 3.5 hours. And even if you're crying immediately before you go on stage, your voice has to be flawless as soon as you get on stage, and your mascara can't be smudged, because it's so important that you don't seem anxious, you don't seem upset, you don't seem panicked or stressed about the situation, or else that will take a crowd that has spent a lot of money out of the moment at minimum. If not, will make them like have anxiety, have panic on their own, overreact to something that's innocent because they're in a headspace that is perceiving everything around them as unsafe. The fact that Taylor and everyone around her recognizes that they are an escape for so many people, and I think escape is so important. Like, yes, there are people that dive too much into escapism and they use it to not confront the world around them or to ignore the world around them or what have you. But I think it is very important to have joy, especially during a time when a lot of people are trying to take joy from us. Joy is incredibly powerful because it keeps us going. It is morale that keeps us able to keep going forward even when things are not necessarily the greatest in the real world. And Taylor sees bringing out special guests like Ed Sheeran as part of that kind of like adding to people's joy by surprising them so they never know what to expect in a good way. And she talks a number of times about how much she loves a secret, especially when she's planned things out and she's kept things quiet for a while. She just loves having a secret. Fascinating that you're mentioning this, Taylor. Then there was the phone call with Travis and this kind of concept that her and Travis have the same job. And I get the comparisons. I get the similarities. I get the way that people might expect that would make them compatible and understand each other's worlds. It just feels very forced to me. It just feels like this is something that is being done to sell this to the public, because I recognize that this is not, I recognize that people think it's suspicious that I like this guy. Like, that's the feeling that I get out of a lot of that. But I do think that for the people that are coming to this who love football, it is making them respect Taylor a bit more, especially because big football men respect Taylor and sees similarities. That said, I do think that there are a lot of elements, like how much work you have to do, how much dedication, how much you have to love it, and I think Cam was a great person to bring on to discuss that, since he is a dancer and his brother is an NFL player, and I do see the overlaps in like the way some things are the same, but also in a lot of senses Taylor is really deflecting and minimizing, and I hate when Taylor deflects and minimizes what she's doing, what her value is, her contributions, her skills, all of those things. Especially when she was talking about, oh, how could I perform in the Super Bowl because my gladiator boyfriend is going to be putting his life on the line. I mean, you were doing the Eras tour while he was in these same stadiums on the, okay. And I do think this is part of the performance. This is part of like how so much is being made about him, how so much of her is being minimized to seem like it fits him and what have you. But I also do think part of it is about like understanding that people are threatened by accomplished women, and that like if she deflects to her man, that she will be perceived as less threatening because they will perceive her as being controlled by this man. I also thought that this was interesting that this is the first time, at least to my knowledge, that she has ever said that she loves him on the podcast. He said he loved her a number of times. Do I believe that Travis and Taylor are likely some level of good friend, especially because they are both keeping each other safe in a lot of ways? Yes. Do I think that this is a romance of the ages and is being presented to us in a realistic fashion, and they are going to stay married for more than a couple months? No, I would not be surprised if this doesn't end up in a wedding, or if it ends in a wedding with a twist. There's somebody else involved, or is a kind of symbolic wedding, or if there's no marriage certificate that actually gets submitted. That'll make a lot of sense. The whole entering into a contract with a man right after dealing with the consequences of a bad contract with a man, both of which that were things that were kind of like, I don't want to say rushed into, but like she was in love with this career idea, so she signed a contract that had terrible conditions for her, because most artist contracts do. And look, while men live longer if they get married, women live shorter and report less satisfaction. And personally, the second that I could figure out how to pay my bills without involving a man, and I didn't need a man for protection at work, the last thing I wanted to do was enter into a long-term contract with a man. No, I'm sorry. Amos was talking about Taylor's desire to conquer things and how it inspired him, and it's so good. I think so many people have horrible preconceived notions about Taylor because most of their opinions are formed from things like articles on Daily Mail and other kind of trash media. Seeing how the people that have known Taylor the longest, and my battery just died, hopefully I didn't ruin anything. seeing the people that know Taylor best talk about Taylor in such a respectful way, in a way that shows that they're inspired by her and she is inspired by them, like, I think that is really big into impacting how a lot of people who maybe don't have fully formed opinions about Taylor yet are going to view Taylor, especially if they're newer fans and haven't like just really thought about a lot of things much. So when she was talking about Rep and they started playing the music behind her and it said, "Girl, girl, girl," pow, in the captioning, I'm like, yes, I love that. I think that's very powerful, and I love that for her. I'm hoping I didn't screw my camera position up too bad. I think I kind of did, but oh well. And speaking of new Swifties, some of the interviews that were included in this first episode were interviews with newer Swifties, and I think that really encourages people that haven't been fans as long to still feel like valued parts of the community. So then we have the first performance since Vienna cancellations and how healing that is for Taylor, and how like getting through that performance, getting back up on the horse was something that was key for her. I think I agree, like if you have a bad experience with something and you like run away from that thing and let that fear fester, it can result in like severe lifelong trauma. I almost fell off a roller coaster when I was a child, and I didn't get on roller coasters for many years after that. And I think if I would have just gotten on another roller coaster and like dealt with the fear, I probably would have still continued to like roller coasters. Nowadays, I don't think they're safe enough because companies don't care about whether or not people live or die, so I would never get on them. But you know, for many years, I wouldn't have felt that way. Then we have a fan that says that like Taylor Swift doesn't feel like a real person. And we're going to circle back to this, but I want you to put a pin in that because I think that's a big common theme of a lot of things that Taylor is doing recently. Next, we saw her kind of working through what seems like an anxiety attack that was coming on by laying down, by listening to an ebook, by talking to her mother, and like seeing her like rationalize and recognize and understanding the impact that she has on so many people, and like fully understanding like how risky it can be really risky to have that many people together in a space, especially when there's a lot of people that have valid reason, well, valid in their own minds, reasons for disliking you. I don't think the large majority, like the Vienna people, had like legit beef, but they thought they did. The mental challenge of worrying about fans' well-beings and still being able to put on a show and like not psyching yourself out and like not having a full-blown like a panic attack, things of that nature. And again, I think it really normalizes people seeing even Taylor Swift has kind of panicky moments from time to time, and she needs to take a moment and relax and think about some other things. I think it's great for people that have anxiety, have panic attacks especially. She talks about how she can't relax, she's twitchy, she's fidgety. Like if you have like ever contained anxiety in your body, that is what it feels like. And I think her describing those things, those feelings, because a lot of people are not diagnosed with the mental problems that they have. And if they were, they wouldn't accept it. And I think just describing how it feels in her body and how she deals with it is so powerful for so many people who could benefit from seeing that. Ed then shows up and she says that the film crew was supposed to start following them in Vienna. She mentions that she didn't even make it to Vienna. She was on the plane on the way there when she found out, and they turned around. And she basically is like, you know, need to get through these shows to get back on the horse, but then I want 2 months just away from people. She talks about feeling hunted, and then Ed brings back the comment that we had from a fan a little while ago and says, you know, people don't see you as human. Like they don't recognize and accept like the stress, the anxiety, the difficulty that she likely goes through every single day trying to put on the best possible performances with people, but also to keep people safe. And whilst there were a lot of hints to like different personas and like the real Taylor Swift versus the brand Taylor Swift, something that we've been discussing in this performance artler space for a while, but Taylor has really been leaning into a lot recently. But she says that she lives lives in a reality that's very unreal a lot of the times. And like the way she like handles all of these complicated feelings and then immediately just like snaps to it and is the person that she needs to be to perform, like just seeing her be able to switch so quickly from Taylor Swift, the person that's just about to have a panic attack. She had to calm herself down. She's kind of anxious going into this tour date because of what happened in Vienna and everything else that's kind of escalated in this kind of, these people want her fans to feel fear, and giving into them just lets them win, even if they didn't manage to get off the attack, you know? Then, for a long moment, we have this sign from a fan that says, "We can see you." And very often there is this belief that Taylor hates Gaylors, and I have said for a long time that Taylor made herself the sheriff of the Gaylor Park. Taylor is #1 Gaylor. Like, I'm sorry, she's writing that narrative. She showed that sign for a long moment that had the rainbow, it had the eyeball, it had the hairpin. I have talked a number of times about the meaning of hairpin drop and the number of times that Taylor has used hairpins both lyrically and as visual devices and things of that nature, and how important they are to the Sapphic community. And they cut to her and she's wearing the orange and pink bodysuit, and well, interestingly enough, I have a flag that's those same colors, and going from the "we can see you" to her in that bodysuit felt like it meant something. She had so much footage to choose from. The footage that she chose, she did so with intent, okay? I'm sorry. If she didn't want people to speculate, she wouldn't continually put little nuggets that are going to make people speculate, especially us, because they're using all of the symbols that we already recognize. And that was on screen for a good hot second, right? And after seeing the entirety of episode 1 up to this point and having it lead up to her going into like a montage of performing different songs from eras, the intro felt so epic, it felt so deserved, so earned after all of the hard work and the build-up and the emotions and the worries. It felt so earned at that moment, and it just like, it reminded me, it was like and I think that was the intent. Like, the intent was to just quickly, hey, remember all of those times that you spent on grainy live screens watching this, or maybe watching it in person if you were really lucky? Put you back in that moment for a moment. It was so cinematic. It felt so Disney princess. The next episode really talks about magic and really kind of continues this visual conveyance of Taylor as this magical fairy tale princess, a Disney princess, literally. And that montage of the Eras tour is intercut with a lot of scenes of people behind the scenes, again, getting us to understand the scope and scale of things without having to say it, just by showing us everything that's happening, little glimpses, so we get the vibe. And just, I love the way she made so many of her dancers and musicians and all of that jazz included in those clips. So it's really, yes, it is about her, but it is about everybody who contributed to that tour. I'm not going to do episode 2 in this episode. It's done way too long. I do think episode 2 is going to be a little bit shorter. I'm going to continue to do episodes about all of these. They are going to be long. They are going to be less edited, just because I want to get them out fast while people still care. I hope you're okay with that. I have been Erin Moriarty. I like discussing pop culture, pop music, especially Taylor Swift, from the perspective that a lot of what we see is a performance, that a lot of performers have public and private personas, and a lot of things are done for PR, but that doesn't necessarily mean things are worse or that anything's devalued, because the artists are writing the story. I also am a late-in-life lesbian who spent 20 years in the closet for the benefit of my career, so I fully understand how and why a person would want to do that. If you like this, if you like any of the things that I've just said in the past 30 seconds, please do be sure to subscribe, like, and comment, because it really does help me out a lot as a small channel. Thank you so very much. Bye-bye.